Kabbalists, Buddhists, etc., have written for centuries that the missing mass of the universe, this missing part, is called the spiritual world. And we're going to go into a lot of detail about what this world is. Where is it? Let's start with that. The physical world is still in the process of being created. There are people that are being born every day. There are plants that are being created every day. Everything in the physical world comes from something that pre-existed before it. If you put a seed in the ground, you can get an oak tree from that seed, but the oak tree obviously doesn't fit inside the seed. The tree can be 50 feet tall. The seed can only be maybe a half inch or so. It's coming from somewhere. For lack of a better term, let's call that place source. Now, this is an important slide. And we're going to break the dimensions down. We're just going to deal with the first 9 dimensions of reality. And this is a basic outline for the rest of our discussion on the spiritual world. The first dimension that we're going to deal with has to do with what we call the 9th dimension. And this is the dimension where what we would call God exists. Now, as humans, it's very difficult for us to understand the concept of God. The 9th dimension is the highest dimension that as humans we can begin to understand and put into words or a physical concept. Actually, not physical, but some sort of theosophical, let's call it theosophical construct. Then the dimensions emerge from this Godhead in a spiral fashion. Now, what's interesting about that is that DNA is also in a spiral fashion, an interlocking double helix, actually. And according to most cosmologists, the universe emerges from the inner world outward. And that we're kind of in the bad neighborhood part of the universe, in the 3rd dimension. We're way down here in the 3rd dimension. There are forces that interact or that act on the physical world that create the universe as we know it around us. These forces have names. And in spiritual research, which most of us probably haven't heard much about, these forces have been defined, they've been categorized, and there have been uses that have been applied for these particular forces that have been applied in meditation techniques. And in spiritual research, which most of us probably haven't heard much about, these forces have been defined, they've been categorized, and there have been uses that have been applied for these particular forces that have been applied in meditation techniques. We're going to talk about some of those techniques in a moment. The first force that acted upon the universe is called the A factor. What do you think that first force does? Just as a guess. Anybody want to guess? Now, this is what we would call God, and this is the first force acting to emerge what we would call reality in the form of the 8th dimension. What would this A factor force do? What does it do? Anybody want to take a guess? Raise your hand so we can use the mic.
Vibrate, make sound.
That's true. It does vibrate. What else does it do?
Could it be light?
It is light, that's right, but it has a very particular purpose that still acts on us today.
Create.
It does create, but what particularly does it create?
Well, I wasn't going to say what it was going to create. I was just saying its function was to expand.
Okay, that's very good. All of those answers are correct to a certain extent. A factor has one job. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Matter?
It does help create matter, that's right. Were there any other before I go into?